In this video, we'll see how to build out our course by adding content to our course. So I've got a new course and I've got 3 modules set up so far, and I'm going to start adding some content to our modules. So let's take module 3, our natural language processing module, and I'm going to add a few content items here. So I can add lecture videos, readings, or external videos like YouTube tutorial videos, for example. So let's start by adding a lecture video. I'm going to put in a title for my lecture. I'm going to put in the link to my video so that the students can watch it. And depending on what platform you use, it'll either publish the link or they'll embed the video directly in Classwise for the students to view it. So you could use a platform like WarpWire, Google Drive, YouTube, etc., wherever you prefer to host your lecture videos. I keep mine in WarpWire, so I'm going to grab the WarpWire link to this lecture video. We'll paste it in there. We can add a description if we like. And we'll add the primary topics that this lecture covers, in this case, transformers. Then finally, I'm going to upload my lecture slides here. And I can upload my slides either as a PDF file or a PowerPoint file. Okay. And I can set a due date if I'd like to require my students to watch the lecture by a certain date. And I can choose whether I want to add a conversational knowledge check for this particular item or not. So if I add a conversational knowledge check, students will be required to have a conversation with EdBot, the class chatbot that's built into Classwise after watching this lecture video. And this conversation will help me to better understand their level of understanding of the lecture. So EdBot will ask them some questions, they'll respond, EdBot will provide feedback on the responses. And EdBot will use all this information it collects through this conversation to provide me an insight on the level of students' understanding of the topic. Okay, so let's add a conversational knowledge check for this particular lecture. We're going to release this item right away. And now we can start to build out our knowledge check chat with EdBot. So let's add a question, and I can add either auto-generate questions or I can create questions manually if I prefer. So the default is auto-generating questions, and it uses an AI model to generate questions about certain topics based on the text covered within this lecture in this case. So I'll add a question, and you can see here it's generated a question based on my lecture. And it's also generated a model answer for that question. So what's the purpose of the model answer? When EdBot asks the students a question in the course of the conversation and the students respond, EdBot will compare the student's response to the model answer I've created here. And depending on how close or far it is away from the model answer, it will provide some feedback for learning purposes back to the student. Okay. And I can go ahead and edit this if I'd like to, the question or the answer, but this looks pretty good. I can add manual questions if I prefer to add questions manually and create answers. Let's add one more auto-generated question for our knowledge check chat here. Okay, and this looks pretty good as a foundational structure for the chat that EdBot is then going to have with the student after they watch this lecture video. So let's go ahead and publish that out to our students. And now I can see that I've got a content item here under module 3. This is the lecture we just published on transformers. If I want to see what the student sees when they open up this item, I can click here to open it up. I can see here's my lecture video embedded. I have EdBot here. If I don't understand anything as I'm watching the lecture, I can ask EdBot here for an explanation. And when I'm done, I click mark as done. And if I want to preview the chat that the student is going to have with EdBot, I can just click there, mark as done. It'll ask me to self-assess my understanding. And then EdBot will begin our knowledge check chat. And you can see here's one of the questions that we just formulated based on this lecture. And I've got an opportunity to respond here and continue the chat. Okay, so let's add one more content item. This time we'll add a reading, and we can add readings either as PDF files that we upload. We can link to PDFs online, or we can add links to things like articles that we find online. So I'm going to grab a link to an academic paper in this case that we'll upload for the students to read. called Attention is All You Need. Okay, I'm going to paste the link here. The topic of this particular paper is also about transformers. I'm going to require all the students to read this. I can also make it optional if I prefer, or just put it in the feed for select students in the class. In this case, we'll give it to everybody. We'll put in a due date here for students to complete this reading. And we'll also add a knowledge check chat for this reading. Okay, so now let's build out our knowledge check chat. Let's auto generate a couple of questions based on that paper here for the student to go through after they read the paper. Here's a good one. Let's add one more. Okay, great. And once we're happy with the questions and the model answers here, we can publish this out to our students. And now we've got a second item here in our feed under the module 3. So I can continue to add more items, my additional lecture videos, any readings, any external videos I'd like the students to go through until I've fully populated the course contents.